This video is brought to you by our own Meta. Thank you so much for donating. If you want to support Brackeys yourself, you can go to patreon.com/Brackeys.
Thanks for tuning in at Brackeys.
So this is the recording of yesterday's monthly live stream. I had so much fun and I really hope that you will enjoy it. If you want to follow along with the project and maybe download it for yourself, you can go to github.com. I have a link for that in the description and the project will be there. Also, towards the end we do quite a long Q&A session and my girlfriend also joins the stream to test out the game with me. So have fun and I hope you enjoy it. Hello everyone to the people who have joined. We are going to start the tutorial on creating a Curve Fever replica, and this is going to be without multiplayer, but it's going to be with local multiplayer. We're not going to do any unit stuff. That's too much for a single tutorial. And basically, we're going to be using Unity 5.5, and that's currently in public beta. So if you want to follow along, you will have to go and download that beta, and I'm just going to show you how to do that right away. So let me jump into Unity here, and you can see this is 5.4 or 5.5, it says so in the left hand corner, and I've downloaded this from going to Chrome and going to unity3d.com/unity/beta, and then scrolling down here to Unity 5.5, or you can just of course type in Unity 5.5 in Google and it will be the first one, and you can run it like any other installer. So I will also say that if something goes terribly wrong with Unity, which I hope it does not, we will might have to improvise a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. So this is the project that we're going to be creating. I have two players in here with movement and this kind of snake effect, and you can see how they're generated over here in the left side here, how we are actually generating the mesh, and that is using the line renderer. And if I select one of these, if I let the game play a bit here and select one of them, you can see that we actually have an edge collider going all the way through here. So I'll show you how to do exactly that. So let's go ahead and create a new project. So let's go to File and then New Project. And it's going to load here. And I want to save this in my projects folder. And I want to call this something like Curve Fever Replica. And then we'll turn this into a 2D scene, and we will disable Unity Analytics. There's no reason for us to include that. And then hit Create Project, and Unity is going to do its magical thing where it boots up our project here. And let me just see. How did I make my Unity black? That is Unity's paid version, but I really think that with their current subscription plan, there's really not much reason to upgrade to Unity paid unless that you're a full-time developer and almost working in a team. I mean, you can really publish a full-fledged game just using the free stuff. So the only difference that you're going to be seeing here is really the color of the editor. Cool. So what I want to begin by doing is finding our main camera and changing the background color to a more suiting black there, just completely black. And let's go in here and create some empty object here, and we'll reset the transform and we'll call this one trail or tail or whatever. Let's do tail, that's better. And let's add a new component onto this, and this is going to be a line renderer. And we are going to have a lot of fun with this line renderer. So let me just show you what is new with this. Well, if we, you can already see it on some of the settings maybe. So if we change our positions array here, and this is just a series of points, each point being a place that our line will go to. So right now you can see that it's going from 0 on the Z to 1 on the Z, and that means that we cannot see it in the 2D view because it's only going in the depth here. And you can see I've changed my scene view to wireframe. You can also change it to shaded, but there's not much to see currently. So let's change back to wireframe to get this view of it. And let's change back to 2D, and instead of going on the Z here, we'll go up, let's say on 1 on the Y, and let's create a third point here, and let's go up on 1 on the X and 1 on the Y. There we go. And you can see it's currently a huge line here. So what we can do is just edit the width to something like 0.1. I think that's more suiting. And you can already now see the difference. If you were to make this inside of the old editor, this would look super wonky. And that's because the old line renderer was really bad if you wanted to do fast turns like this. It would twist in odd ways and look really, really bad. But you can see here it's preserving the width of the line all the way, which is so nice. And what we can then do is we can add some corner vertices. Actually, I'm going to go in here and write maybe 3 or 5. I'm just going to do 5 on the corner and 5 on the gaps. And that will just insert some extra vertices. You can see what it's done here to round off the line. And that's just going to make it look so much more nice. So essentially what we can then do is have this tail here where we then change the array of positions here. So our position array, and then just add a bunch of points each time we get far enough away from the previous point. And this way we can get these kind of curving lines. That does mean that if we will play for a very long time, say we do a half-hour long session, and for some reason no one dies, this positions array will be totally cluttered and overpopulated, and that will slow down our game. So this is not something they can do if you want to have 1 million players in there and want them to play for a long time, but it is definitely something that you can do if you just want a normal like couple of minutes play session tops with say 3 to 4 players. That is going to be just fine. So in order to actually edit this through script, let's actually just create a new script here, and let's just call this one the tail script, and hit create an ad, and there we go. So let's double click on that to open it up in Visual Studio, and we'll have a look at actually coding this. And I'm just going to look at the chat here, if I can bring that up, to see if anyone is asking some questions. So what is Curve Fever? Curve Fever is a very snake-like game, but a bit more modern in that it can move in more than just these very fixed directions. And yeah, some comments about my Danish accent that I'm going to exclude for the video. Cool. So you can see Visual Studio opened up on my secondary monitor here, and here we go. So what we can do is just remove system.collections, but we are going to be using system.collections.generic because we want to store some things in a list. And we'll also import up here system.link. Like this, and that is handy for a few methods like getting the last element in a list. So that's why we'll be importing that. And we want to require a component up here, and the component that we want to require is of type line renderer, just to make sure that we have a line renderer attached to the same script or to the same game object as this script. And this way we can safely store a reference to that, and it's not a rigid body, it's a line renderer, and we can call that just line. And then in our start method we can set line equal to get component of type line renderer. Awesome. So now we have a reference to our line. What I then want to do is create some kind of array or some kind of list is what we're going to be using, which is basically just a resizable array. So some kind of list of items. And more specifically, we want a list of points in space. So we are going to create a list of vector 2s because it's a 2-dimensional game. And this is going to be our points that both our line renderer will follow. It's points that we have been in space and that our collider, when we add it later, will follow as well. So we'll create this points array here. And we'll also create a public float, and this is going to be our point spacing. So this is how far between we want our points to be. And we want to set that to something like maybe 0.1 units is going to be definitely enough. And yeah, so I think that everything there is fine. So what we can then do is go down here into our update, and we could basically just set a point here, create some method for setting a point every single frame, but that is not very efficient. So what we'll do instead is we will check whether or not we're far away enough from the last point that we want to create a new point, or else it will look weird. So we'll create that check in a second, but let's first have a look at how we would actually set down a point. So this is where we'll actually access our line renderer. So let's start by adding our current position to our points arrays. And we do that by simply pressing points.add. And what we want to add is our current position, so transform.position. That's pretty easy. Then what we can do is we can say that we want our line dot number of positions to be equal to the length of our points array, so points array dot count. So basically imagine that when we start off the game, we are going to have 0 points. So and then we are going to go through and it's going to draw a frame. We're going to be somewhere and it's going to set the first point. That means that our points array will add our transform.position and we will now have 1 point. That means that our number of positions on the line should be equal to 1. And then what we can do is we can say line.set position, and we can use an index, which is going to be points.count -1, because if we have one element and want to access that element, it has the index of 0, and so 1 minus 1 equals 0. And again, if we have 3 elements, we want to access the last one, that's going to be an index of 2, so we go 3 minus 1 equals 2. So that's why we have to put the -1 in there. And of course, we just want to use transform dot position again here. Cool. So now we have that in there. And we also want to make sure that we, on our line here, that we actually instantiate our points array here. So at the very beginning, we want to set our points array or our points list equal to a new list of vector 2s. And then we can start off the game by setting our first point. So now it's going to set a bunch of points. And if we go in here, you will see that happening. So if I hit play and try and move around this tail here, you can see that it sets a bunch of points, but this is really way too much. You can see our positions array just going completely nuts, and once it goes this far, you can see some weird behavior starts happening. So let's control this a little bit, and we do that by going in here and adding a simple check. So all we want to see is whether or not our distance, so we use vector3.distance, between the last point and our current position. So we do points.last, and this is a function that is only available to us because of system.link, between our last point and our current position. If that is greater than some number, which is going to be our point spacing, well, then we want to set a new point. So all we're saying here is that we only want to set a new point in case we've moved far enough away from the old one in order for it to make sense. And we do that by checking the distance between the last point and our point and seeing whether or not it's greater than the amount or the distance that we want to see, and that is our point spacing. So if that makes any sense to you, we should now see that when we hit play here, it inserts just a single one right at the beginning. And you can see here in the positions array, it has only 1. And then when I start moving it, we can see it starts to add new points. So that's awesome. Whoops, and I did something weird with the mouse there, but you can actually see it working. You will also notice that it doesn't look too smooth when it adds new points here, but that's okay because the front of our line here is going to be covered by the head of our player, and we're going to create a little player head there. So that is actually not going to be noticeable. So how about we now create our player head or actual snake, and how about we also make some better looking graphics for this line here. So let's start by maybe making this line look a tiny bit nicer. And one way to do this is by actually inserting a material. So the reason why it's pink right now is because the materials array is completely empty, and just like any other object, our line needs some way to draw colors on the scene, whether or not to use lighting, if we want a texture, or just a solid color. So that's what we're going to add. And this is where I'm going to just have a look in the chat to see if you guys are all right and are able to follow along here. So let me see here. Do I work with programming? Yes. The Brackeys is my job, so I definitely work with programming. And Yeah, nothing too pressing as far as I can see. So I think we'll just go ahead and continue. Cool. So what we want to do here is go down into our project and right click and go create material to create a new material. And this is going to be our tail material. So I'm just going to do tail mat. And we can take our tail here and drag our tail mat into this empty material slot. You can now see it turns gray, and that's because we're using the standard shader. What we in fact want to use is the sprite's default shader, and this is just going to draw us some color, in this case just total white, without applying any lighting, because we don't have any lighting in our scene, so we just wanted to draw a flat color. And you can tint this color on the material, but we're not going to be doing that because we want two different players, and so we want to change the color independently for each player, and therefore we want to go to the color parameter here under the line renderer, and this is in fact a gradient, so we can't go in here and change the color on one end and have it like smoothly transition from one end to another. And we can do the same with the opacity, so this is actually super fun to play around with. And if you want some very funky looking snakes, I definitely recommend you spend some time in here. But for now, I'm just going to delete the last key here to make the color totally solid. And then I'm going to edit this first parameter here, and we're going to make it some kind of light cyan blue like this. Very lasery, and I think that looks pretty nice. It's what Achtung die Kurve or Curve Fever definitely uses. And more water there. All right, cool. So now we can cover this up with a head to our snake. But first, let's save our level here, and this is just going to be main level. And I just hit Ctrl S or Command S to do that. I'll also go to File, Save Scene. And let's create a new object for this. Let's create an 2D object sprite. And let's reset the transform on this. And this is going to be our snake or our head. You can call it whatever you want. Actually, I think I'm going to call it, let's just call it snake. And we can then choose a sprite for this, and I'm just going to use the default Unity built-in knob sprite, but you can of course just search for any kind of circular sprite on the web or create one yourself, but I just thought this was pretty fitting and wanted to use that. And I don't know about the color here. You could choose a color, or you could just go completely white. I'm just gonna go white with this, but of course, as always, spend more time on the graphics than I do. They are super important. So now we can create a script on our snake here, and to make it move. However, what we want to do is of course link up our tail to our snake, because currently we are using transform.position inside of our tail script here to actually move this line around. However, if we put our tail as a prefab, or as a child of our snake, things should immediately work. As soon as we move our snake here, we should see the tail updating, but this is not actually going to work whenever we create an edge collider for our tail, because our edge collider will move along with our tail. That doesn't have these world space positions that is relative to our tail, so we actually want our tail to stay in place. So in order to do this, what we'll do is we'll go inside of our tail, and we'll create a reference to our snake. So we'll go public game object and call this one snake or snake head or whatever. And we'll simply go, and this is not going to be a game object, this is going to be a transform. And then instead of doing transform.position, we do snake.position there and down here. So snake.position both places, and that should just fix that right away, as long as, of course, we remember to drag our snake into that slot. So now when we hit play, nothing happens when we move our tail, but lots of stuff happens when we move our snake. So that's awesome, and I can see the array going crazy here, and the reason why is we need to change it one more place, and that is up here. So we need to do snake.position there as well in order for this to work, and now we should see that when we move around the snake here, things just work. And I think it's super exciting to see how Unity draws the geometry over here. And I actually think that this works pretty well. In fact, if you want to create a painting program, well, here you go. That was pretty easy. So that's pretty cool. And let's actually create some controls for our snake. So again, looking in the comments here, because I got some requests last time to look at more comments. How old am I? I am 19 years old. So are we making a snake game? Yes, we are making a replica of Curve Fever. And I think we can just move on here. It's okay. Awesome. So let's create a new script for this. So let's find our snake and let's hit add component and let's call this one our snake, or you can do movement or whatever. Hit create an add and let's double click this to open it up in Visual Studio. There we go. And you can see up here that it imports system.collections and system.collections.generic. We're not going to be using those in this script. Instead, we are going to be using updates, and we are not going to be using start. And we are also going to be using a new function called fixed update. Awesome. So the idea here is to have the snake always move. So at any time we want our snake moving forwards at a speed that we determine with a variable. So let's start by creating that speed variable. And this is of course going to be a public float. And we are just going to call this one speed and maybe default it to something like 3. Then we'll have the ability to rotate this snake, and we'll do that using another variable, another public float, and this is going to be our rotation speed or our turn speed or whatever. And this is going to be a lot higher. This is going to be something like 200. And yeah, so what we'll do is we'll use our update method to capture input. So we can go in here and say input.getAccessRaw. And the reason why I'm using getAccessRaw is because we really don't need any smoothing on this movement, and getAccessRaw will make sure that we don't get that. If you want some more slow and clunky controls, but that might allow players who are better to do more fine tuning, you can go ahead and use getAccess, but I think that getAccessRaw works better for the game. And what we'll do here is we will get the access called horizontal. And what we'll do with this is we'll store it in a private variable up here, and we'll call this one our let's just call it horizontal and default it to 0. And then we can say here that horizontal equals that input.getAccess, and we can then use this to move. So let's begin by making our snake move forward. So in order to do this, we want to say transform.translate. This is going to allow us to move using this translation, which is how far we want to move on the X, Y, and Z. And in our case, we want to move vector 2.up. So we want to move upwards, which is following this green arrow. That's going to be our steering point. That is going to be our forward point for our snake. And we want to do that using our speed. So multiply that with our speed and multiply it as well with time.fixed delta time to make it independent on the rate of our fixed update. So our fixed update runs at a fixed rate. That means that we have a fixed amount of iterations over this loop each second. And that rate is stored in this variable. So this is the amount of time since the last time this loop ran. And we're going to multiply that in so that if one computer runs on a different fixed rate than another computer, that is going to be evened out by multiplying this variable. And therefore, we're going to move at the same pace on all computers. Cool. And we want to orient ourselves using space.self. So we want this movement to be local and not on the world, because if we always moved up, no matter of our rotation, the game would be pretty boring. We want to move up, and then if we rotate, we want to move towards the new up. Cool. So that should work already. And if we actually save that and hit into Unity, we should see that our snake just moves up. So that's perfect. And all we really need to do now is use this horizontal movement here as a rotation. So we do transform.rotate, And we basically want to rotate around vector3.forward. So if we have a look in our scene here, switch to 3D mode here, you can see that we have this blue Z axis. And this is in fact our forward axis. So when I say that we want to rotate around this, what I mean is that we rotate this way here. So in these directions, and you can see that is exactly what we want to do, is rotate around the Z axis. And how much we want to rotate is going to depend on the exact same things as it did up here. So it's going to depend on our rotation speed and time.fixed delta time. Cool. Except this will not work, because if we save this now, we're just going to keep rotating here. You can see that we're just rotating in a circle. Look, a perfect circle. Isn't that nice? If only my math teacher would have been able to draw this. I should have shown him this program. So this is just going to spin infinitely. What we want to use in order to orient where we want to rotate is our horizontal variable here, because input.getAxis raw gives us a value, a float value between -1 and 1, 0 being no movement, -1 being to the left, and 1 being to the right. So what we can do here is we can multiply that in as well down here. So if we multiply that into our multiplication chain here, that means that if we press to the side, things are going to be, or to the left, we are going to reverse this. To the right, we're just going to let it be. And if we don't change, or if we don't press any buttons, meaning that this will be 0, we're going to rotate 0 degrees. There you go. So it's that easy. And one thing that I want to do here that I only know because I've done this before is that we want to put a minus in front, or else our controls will be reversed. But if you want to have reversed controls, that's all you have to do, is change this little minus right here. And now we should be able to jump inside of Unity, hit play, and accurately move around just like in Curve Fever. So I actually think that this is kind of exciting, and it's really fun to play around with. It feels awesome with this tail being rendered right after you. And I actually think that we can easily bring up the rotation speed to something like 250. That works a little better. It makes it somewhat harder to move around, but also feels more fast-paced. So you can play around with these variables, and it's very easy to add pickups to this. You simply change the speed or rotation speed. If you want to do opposite movement, all you do is you put a negative sign in front of the rotation speed, and there you go. You have flipped the direction of movement. You can do all sorts of stuff. If you want to clear out the tail here, all you do is that you set the positions array here, or your own list inside of the script. You simply use .clear. It will clear out the entire array, and it will start from new. So you can very, very easily implement all of these different power-ups that are in the original Curve Fever, but I don't have time to really implement in this stream. So I'm just going to see here how the chat is doing. So thanks for all of the people saying that you like it. I'm really glad that you do. I'm trying my best here. And let's see here. Not too many questions. That might mean that I'm doing something right. Okay, cool. So right, so will I ever do a C# scripting tutorial? This is a C# scripting tutorial, one dedicated to C#. I have a series on that. If you mean if I'll ever do another one, I definitely hope to, but I'm not going to do one until I have some subject that I really think is necessary. And I really did all that I wanted with that series, but I'm not closing it out either, because there's definitely more to explore with the C# language, but the original thought was just to kind of have it be a introduction to the language and it really turned into everything you need to know to create a pretty good game, actually. So I already went further with it than I thought I would, but maybe I want to do more. That's kind of unknown. So how am I doing? I'm doing great. Can I show tail.cs code? Yes, it's right here. There you go. What I'll do is I'll put this up on YouTube if you want to see any of it. And I will also make sure to upload this project to probably GitHub, just as we did with the last live stream, so everything will be available. And of course, guys, I cannot answer every question right now because things are crazy, but at the end we'll do some Q&A, so don't worry about that. What if you make a game developer starter kit tutorial series? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I have a series called Make a Game that goes from the very beginning of development, like from installing Unity to actually getting something in the scene. But you could definitely use that as a starter series. It's exactly meant for that. So you can use that. So the set point method works like this. So this is how we add points. So we add a point to the array using snake.position. We then set the amount of positions in our line array to how many positions we have stored locally. And then we set the last position in that array to snake.position. So there you go. That's what we're doing there. What's my name of the theme in Visual Studio? It's Monokai. I've edited a bit, but I will just put that in chat. It's Monokai. There you go. You can download that and import it into your projects as well. We all know that if there's something more important than skills or anything, it is our programming colors. It's what makes us look professional. So make sure to get that right. So yeah, I think we're just going to continue with the video here. So the next thing that I want to do is add in some collision detection. And then after that, we'll add in another player and then maybe some boundaries to our map. So at the moment here, you can see that neither our snake or our tail has any colliders on them whatsoever. So let's go ahead and change that. And let's begin by adding a collider to our snake. So we'll go in here and hit Add Component, and we'll create a Physics 2D and Circle Collider. There you go, and let's shift back to shaded mode here, and let's bring in the radius just a bit. We definitely don't want to have this be too large. And one nifty trick that I'll show you here is if you are editing some variable like dragging in here in Unity, and then hold down Alt, that will allow you to fine tune. So that's a really handy shortcut that I use pretty much all the time. Just holding down Alt, and you can fine tune any number. And that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to shift back to 2D mode here, makes more sense. And then what we can do is turn this into a trigger, because we're not going to have any Unity physics in here. We are going to do all of the physics ourselves. I mean, we've done the movement independent of the Unity physics system, and we're not going to have any flying objects or anything like that. So I really don't think there's any reason to use it. However, whenever we are moving a collider, remember to attach a rigid body 2D anyways, and then just mark it as kinematic. And you can see here how this has changed in 5.5. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. I'm not going to go into any of it right now, but that is definitely something that you should check out. Overall, I'm really enjoying this beta. I think it's the best one that they've shipped for a while. There's also a bunch of improvements on the particle system that is super exciting. So yeah, make sure to change that to kinematic so that it won't act on its own. It will only act if we tell it to. And there you go. So we're still moving around the scene. And all we need to do now is add a collider to our tail. So how do we do this? Well, one way, or actually the best way I would say, is adding a component here on the Physics 2D called the Edge Collider. And the nifty little thing about the Edge Collider is that it works exactly the same way as our line renderer. And that's awesome, because basically it just has an array of points, just as we have up here, that we want this line to go through. So you can see here, if I set the same points as we have up here, so I create 3 points here, and we have a 0, 1, we have a 1, 1, and a 0, 0. You can see now that our line goes through there. We have this collider. It might not be too visible on the screen or on the stream there. I can just maximize here. By the way, maximizing a window, shift space. You can do it with anything in Unity. It's super handy. So you can see that it just goes through there. So all we really need to do is modify our script a tiny bit to actually change these points. So let's go under our tail. Let's require a new component. So require component type of, and then we do and we're going to call this one edge collider 2D. And we create a new private variable here. So edge collider 2D, and this is just going to be our call for collider. And up here we want to set call equal to get component of type edge collider 2D. Cool. So that allows us to, down here, change some things about this collider. So if we do call dot, I believe it's just points here, we can set that equal to our points list. And all we need to do is take this here, you can see, and convert it from a list into an array. And to do that, we just use dot to array of type vector2 and then round it off with some parentheses. So that is really, really easy to do. So we just feed that right in there. One thing that you will notice is if we now hit play, we will get an error right off the bat here. And other than that, things are going to be working. So I will just make sure to play the game a bit better here. So let's just play the game a little bit. We can pause the game. We can take a look at our snake here. And you can see at our tail, and you can see that we have this line at a pretty good resolution actually. So that's pretty damn accurate. And of course we get this error. So it says invalid points assigned to 2D edge collider. And the reason why is that the first time that we call this set point, we only have 1 point. And the edge collider does not like to have less than 2 points because, well, frankly, it makes sense. You cannot make a line out of a single point. So that's why it throws out an error here. And you could just ignore it because it doesn't really have an impact on the gameplay. It doesn't stop the game or anything, but it looks bad to ignore stuff like that. So what we're going to do here is going to add it, or just move this line up here. Actually, we'll do that in a second and I'll show you why. But what we can do is just add in here an if statement where we say that if points.count is greater than 1. So we only want to do this if we have more than a single point inside of our list. And that should get rid of that error there. And everything else should be working just fine. Cool. And next, why I wanted to actually move this, you will see in a moment, and it has to do with colliding with your own tail. So if we now take a look at our, of course we want to change this to trigger, that's important, at our snake script. So let's open up our snake script in Visual Studio. And we are going to, let's see here. Right, so we're going to add a function, void on trigger enter 2D. And of course, this is a callback method, just like start or update by Unity. So you need to name it exactly as I've done here. And basically all it does is that whenever we hit another trigger or hit another collider with a trigger, this is going to be called, and it's going to give us some information about what we hit. And that information is going to be of type collider 2D, and it's going to be, let's just call it call for collider. We could also do call info. Let's just do call. And it's really important that you put 2D here both places. So let's just call this call. And what this allows us to do is, for example, debug.log, what did we just hit? So the name of the collider that we just hit. So if we do this now, we should expect that nothing happens until we collide with our own tail. But what really happens is we collide with our tail a lot. Actually, we collide every frame. So what is happening here? Or each time we make a new point at least. So what's happening here? Well, the reason why, and you will see this very obviously, is if we pause the game, zoom in on our snake head, and then select our tail, you can see that our edge collider, and again, this might be hard to see, but we have this green line going here, and it actually moves all the way in here, meaning that we are colliding with the very tip of our tail each time, each frame. So how can we change this? Well, it's really easy. What we do is we simply allow ourselves to ignore that first point in the array. So we just don't add the first point of our or that I should say the recently added point, will just not add that to the array. So we'll go in here, we'll move this code up here, and let me walk you through what's happening. So we are far enough away from our last point that we want to set a new one. We go down here and we say, if we have more than one point, we want to add some points to our collider. We go in here and add what we currently have. Then we add a new point, and then we add that to our line. So we will draw the tail all the way up to the tip, all the way up to our head, but we will not actually draw that last point that we just inserted before the next loop. So if we now go here and hit play, we should see this fixed. And actually we had 2 collisions there off the bat, and I believe the reason why is how we set up our circle collider here. So that's just, or our edge collider here. So let's just take these points here, change them back to 2 and move them way off. So let's just do 999, 999, 999, 999. Okay, let's just do 100 on those. There we go. Just move them completely off the scene, and that should fix that error. There we go. So if I now hit play and zoom in, you can see that our collider here is only drawn to the previous point, and therefore will never be able to touch our head. However, if we then go in here and collide, you can see it says tail each time we cross. Awesome. So what we can do with this is, of course, make some logic for well, stopping the game every time we hit a tail. And this as well, just have a look at the chat again. So let's see here. If anyone have some questions that requires more elaboration, I definitely recommend you to go to the Brackeys forum, because there's, well, a whole place where you can submit your code and your project files and everything, and people are awesome in there. And I will also mid-video point out that this live stream is made possible by the awesome supporters over at Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Brackeys, you can choose to support me with a monthly donation of any amount, and in return you can get some cool rewards. So if you want to see more of this stuff, that is really the way that you can help me make it. So thank you so much to the people who are already donating. I'm having so much fun doing these live streams and being able to do this full time. So that is freaking amazing. So let me see what is going on here. Fun fact, there you go. Yep, it would be awesome if every time the game started a German with a deep voice said the name of the game. Could I do that? Achtung der Kurve. I don't know why, but I think like every German person sounds really angry. I think I've watched like too many World War movies. Why not move position instead of translate? You can definitely use move position, but there's really no reason to, unless you want it to be part of the physics system. And with that, I mean that if you want to do like, if you want to do collision detection while moving, which we don't want to do, we only want to do it when we have moved or right before moving. So if you want a collider to actually be able to stop you in your translation, then you would use our rigidbody.move position. But we just want to move no matter what, and then we will handle what happens if we actually collide with something. And that's why we use transform.translate. And I'm sorry to all of the German people who are just offended. I really did not mean to do that. And the tail is made up of a bunch of arrays. Not a bunch of arrays, it's made up of one array with a bunch of points in it, that's correct. But you can really limit the amount of points, especially because Unity is doing such a great job of smoothing the curve. And if you want to do even more with this, you can use Bezier curves and maybe pick up an asset on the store or learn the math yourself, which is an awesome way to blend or do these smooth curves. So that's something you could check out. And now I think it's time to kind of continue this video. We're getting towards the end of it. So that's awesome. And again, stick around, because at the end we're going to do a Q&A, and we're going to invite Sophie Bab onto the screen as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and you don't want to miss beer time. I say even more dumb stuff when it's beer time. Who knows what nationality I will offend next. Stick around to know or to find out. Cool. So what we're going to do now is maybe add another player. So let's go in here, and this is really easy to do. All we want to do is create an empty object, reset the transform, and this is going to be our player. And we can then take our tail and our snake and move those under our player, because both of them have, well, if we just center our player, it's not going to matter because all of the positions will work out. So what we can then do is take our player here, drag it into a project to turn it into a prefab, then duplicate it and rename the first one to player 1 and the second one to player 2. And that should be fine. And then we can maybe move this over. So our first snake here, if we focus in on this, will start at a position of 2. And actually, let's do -2 and 2. And we want this to be facing downwards. So let's rotate this 180 degrees on the Z so that it will move this way when the game starts. Our second snake here is going to start at 2 and then -2 on the Y. And this is going to be moving upwards when we start the game. Again, a super awesome improvement to this game would be spawning in these players and then having them spawn at random positions. Just make sure that they're a bit further away from each other. That would make the whole thing feel a lot more random and give more variety to your game. So that's one thing that you can definitely do. Then what we'll do is we'll take the first tail here and just leave the color, but the second tail we want to change the color. And let's see if we can see that updating. Currently the two tails are on top of each other. So what we'll do is just disable this tail really quickly and then edit the other one here. And I just want to remove the last part here and change the color here to maybe an orange color. It could be pretty cool. Something like that. I actually really like the color here. And then we can re-enable the other tail as well. And you will notice that these two players should actually be working now. So if we hit play here and move around, they will move around and they will do so. But they will, oh, there we go. And you can see the collision works for both of them. So they will move around and they will do so just on a mirrored axis. And that's fine if you find that that's funny, but that what we will do is we will map them to two different parts of the keyboard. So in order to do this, let's go under Edit and then Project Settings, Input. And let's open up the axis here, and we can find the one called horizontal. This is the one that we are using. You can see that there's also a horizontal down here, but this is for handling joystick input, and we're not going to be dealing with that at all. But you could definitely use that as well if you want to allow for using a joystick. So in our case here, the name is horizontal, and we have a negative button and a positive button, and these are the left and right arrow keys. However, it also allows us to use A and D. So let's split this up in two different ones. So let's delete A and D from this. Let's create a new one by simply duplicating the array element and calling this one horizontal 2. And then instead of going left and right here, we go A and D. So now we have one with left and right, and we have one with A and D. And now all we need to do is inside of our script for our snake is add a public variable. And this is going to be a public string, and it's going to be the input axis, and you can put name there, but I'm just going to do input axis, and it's going to default to horizontal. And then we can go into Unity. Whoops, of course we need to put our input axis down here. No use hard coding it when you want to use the variable, so input that down there. Then we can go into Unity, take our player 2 here and find the snake, and then we can input something else here. So instead of horizontal, we can now input horizontal 2, and that will now be wired to that input axis. So this allows us to hit play and control them completely separately, which my brain, for the life of me, cannot do. Jesus Christ, this is hard. But you can see that the collision and everything is working. Awesome. So the very last thing that I kind of wanted to do in this game is have a game over. I want to have some walls, because frankly now you can just go off the screen, and that way you can never lose, frankly. And I also wanted to show you how you can maybe check down here whether or not it is actually a player you've hit, so that you won't die. Say if you wanted to add pickups to your game, those wouldn't kill you. That's kind of a good idea to not have them do that. Let's actually do this. So let's create the game over state. So in order to do this, let's create a new script on a new empty game object. So reset the transform on that, and let's call this one the game manager. And let's add a component called game manager. Hit create and add there, and let's open it up in Visual Studio. There we go. And we want to use none of these and none of these. And then we can have a public method in here called end game. And this is going to end the game. So we're just going to write debug.log game over, something like that. And you could of course display what player has lost and stuff like that. In a moment we'll reset the scene, but I really encourage you to add some UI to let the user know what's really going on. But for now we'll just throw a debug.log there. And then we'll call this from inside of our snake. So here we'll go, if something hits us, we'll go if collider.tag is equal to, and then we can go like killable or a death objects or whatever. So you want to add some kind of tag for all of the objects that could potentially kill the player. So kills, I don't know, you can add whatever you want. You could also have different tags. So we could have something like a player tail, and we could have something like a wall and have there happens different stuff if you collide it. For now I'm just going to add a tag, something like kills player. And then if the object is tagged as kills player, we'll then find our game manager by going game object dot find object of type game manager. And again, whenever we do this sort of stuff, I encourage you to use a singleton pattern or some way that's a bit better, because finding an object of a certain type is a very sloppy call and it is taxing on the computer. So if you want to check out how to really do that, you can check out one of the tutorial series. I pretty much implement a singleton in all of them, at least in the 2D platformer course and in the multiplayer FPS course. You will definitely see me do that. But maybe the 2D platformer course is the best place to go if you want to see stuff, a bit more advanced programming patterns and stuff like that. So find game object of type game manager, and then of course, because we made this a public method, we can then go end game, and it's going to end the game right away. Awesome. But one thing that we do want to happen, because we might have a slight delay on when the game ends, is to have the player who collided with the other player. And of course now we need to tag them. So let's find our player 1 and 2, tag their tails as new tag here, and we'll create a new tag to the list called, and it was kills player, I believe. Oh, I doubt myself. There you go. Kills player. And of course we need to go back in here and actually tag that. There we go. And now we can see that if we hit play and I run into one of the players here, it just keeps going. It says game over and then it just keeps going. So what we'll do is we'll just in here change our speed to 0 and our rotation speed to 0 as well. So that will just make sure, and I'm actually going to do this right above the other call here. No particular reason, I just find it a bit clearer to do the local stuff first and then go out to other objects. It's just an OCD thing really. So now you can see that I can hit the guy here and he will stop moving, and the other player will not stop moving. So if we go in here and hit play, the other guy will continue. There you see. Awesome. So the player who dies is pacified, and then we can go into our game manager, and I want to add a slight delay. And whenever we talk about waiting inside of a method, adding some kind of delay, what I like to use and what you should use is a coroutine. So we go up here and import system.collections.generic, not generic, just system.collections. And we go down here and create an I enumerator, and this is the coroutine, and we call this the play end game animation. And I'm not going to have any animation in here. For now, we're just going to wait. I'm going to throw out a debug.log and then just wait. I'd really encourage you to create some UI that comes on the screen, says this player won, press a key to play again, or just plays again, or whatever. Just let the user know what's going on. But for now, because this is of course a limited amount of time we have, I also want to do the Q&A, and we also have some walls. I'm just going to write game over here. And then we will wait a certain amount of seconds. So we'll do yield return new wait for seconds. And in here, we will input the amount of seconds that we want to wait. In our case, we're just going to wait 1 second. And then we can transition or reload the scene. So we can do using Unity Engine dot scene management. And down here, we then go scene manager dot load scene, and the scene that we want to load is the currently loaded scene. So we just want to reload that scene, and we do that by getting the currently loaded scene by going scene manager dot active scene or get active scene. There we go. And then we want to use either the name or the build index of that scene, and I'm just going to use the build index. There we go. So if we write that out and hit play, we should see that if one of our players dies, it waits 1 second. Wait, something is not working here. And the reason why is, of course, we need to call this method. So you can't just go like this because it's a coroutine. Instead, we have to do start coroutine and then input the method. And there we go. Close that off. Make sure you have the correct number of parentheses. That should be 4 in total. And then we can hit play. And let's now see if this is working. There we go. Game over. And 1 second after, it restarts. So we have the very central logic in place, and now it's as easy as expanding the level. We're just going to make some walls, but you can really go crazy here and add all sorts of stuff that the player should avoid or pick up and stuff like that, and add some UIs to let some UI to let the user know what's going on, a menu, a pause menu, stuff like that. And all of this stuff is something I show how to implement in other tutorials. Again, if you find that this is the correct kind of level for you, kind of level of difficulty, I definitely suggest you check out the 2D platformer course. A lot of the stuff that you see here will be repeated in there, but with a lot new stuff as well. And I show how to create menus and all that stuff that this game could definitely need after we finish up the live stream. So just wanted to plug that. Hopefully I'm allowed to do that. And without further ado, let's just add the walls so I can get on to answering your questions. I think there's no reason to stop now. We're so close. So let's open up Photoshop. And I'm going to use Photoshop. You can use anything. It really doesn't matter. You can use a white square and build it inside of Unity. You can search for this. You can use GIMP, whatever. I'm just going to be using Photoshop. And I'm just going to create a new, I don't even know what it is, canvas or whatever, a new file. And we're going to call this walls. And the pixels here, we'll just have it be 1080 by 1080. That's definitely too much, but we'll just use that. And double click that, call it BG. Let's remove it. Let's now create a new square shape here. Drag from one corner to the other, hit Ctrl T. Just drag this to make sure that it snaps to the edges. Hit enter to apply that transformation. Let's then, instead of having this be filled out with white, let's remove the fill and instead add a stroke. So I'm just going to add a red stroke here so you can clearly see what's going on. And in fact, I think this stroke might be pretty good. Excuse me. So we can maybe make it a bit tinier. Something like 10 points. I think it's going to be fine. And let's make this completely white so that we can control the color inside of Unity. Because whenever you have something totally white, it allows you to tint it into any color. If you have something black, you can't tint it at all. If you have something red, it's difficult to tint it in opposite colors, such as green. It's just going to be a weird brown because of the way that colors are added together. So whenever you want to change stuff inside of Unity, just make it white and you can do it inside of Unity. So let's now save this, and I'm just going to save it directly in as a Photoshop file, and that's going to work fine. But you can also export to PNG, not JPEG, because you want transparency here. So let's go into projects and find our Curve Fever replica, assets, and this is going to be our walls. I hit OK, and there we go. Set the Joker. And then we can find our walls object down here and set our pixels per unit to something like 120. Yeah, so that is absolutely perfect. We can maybe go 115 even. Yeah, just make the map a tiny bit larger. And now all we need to do inside of Unity itself is select the walls object and add a polygon collider to this. And that just makes sure that Unity will automatically fit a collider onto that, and we will make sure to tag it as kills player as well. If you want to have the functionality where some player teleports from one end of the screen to the other, so the player can really just go through the wall and will come out on the other side. That's not something we're going to be doing today, but that is definitely possible for what we are doing. What I would then recommend is you having multiple line renderers and instantiating them in so that whenever you want a line renderer to end, you just stop putting in more points in that one, create a new one, and then start putting points on the opposite side of the screen. And you can, of course, just snap the position of the player over to the other screen. But that is a bit more complicated and frankly would take some time to get working, so it feels really nice. So today we're just going to make the walls kill the players. And I think in fact that this is working now. So one thing you will notice is that we can get multiple game over screens here, so you can get 2 ones, and that's not something that we want. So inside of Visual Studio, let's just correct this by adding some kind of private Boolean variable. And by the way, the reason why I write private here, it's just a habit. You don't have to do that. You can just write bool as well. I just like to be very explicit with what I'm doing, and sometimes I do it in a tutorial, even though I haven't done it any of the other places. Don't tell anyone. There you go. So private bool, and we will call this one has ended. Start by setting that to false. And then if the game ends here, we'll say has ended equals true. But we will only do this if we haven't ended. So if has ended, we just want to return out here. There we go. So that should make sure that we only end the game once. So if we play now and go in here, you can see only one game over. The other guy will stop moving as well, but we only get one game over call. All right, so that's pretty much all I wanted to show in the stream. We made it through. That's amazing. So I think it's kind of time to invite Sophie Bab onto the screen. Come here. And we should test out the game. Since we are creating a 2-player game. Say hi. Say hi. So, all right. Let's try that again. Okay, so this is the official one. She just had to get the controls there. You can see that's what happens when I open a beer.
Damn, man, make some space.
I forget everything. Yes!
No,
once
sorry,
again.
no swearing.
No. You can say cow.
Whoops.
You can say whoops, that works.
Whoops.
Sure. Do you want to do one more?
Okay, one last one.
Okay, let's do it.
This time I'm gonna win. Okay.
Yeah, again, I'm orange. She's cyan. Let's do it. If you go fuck one more time, I'm gonna...
I'd just say, if this was Actung and there were power-ups and stuff, I would definitely...
Yeah, you would kick my ass, I know.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks for playing.
So, thanks for the game. I really enjoy it, actually. It's fun to play.
So, I'll switch over to this UI. You can keep sitting if you want. You could also change over, whatever suits you. And we'll do some questions. How about that? So, first of all, cheers, everyone.
Okay,
it's
cheers.
time.
I think you deserve beer.
Thank you.
Game in like 1 hour.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So that went well. Yeah, so come with all of your questions, personal questions, or about the project or whatever, and we'll figure something out. Let's see here. Let me see. So much stuff here. I'm just scrolling through to find, is there a big difference between C# and C++? Yes, there's kind of a big difference, and at the same time there's not. They're both object-oriented programming languages. They're both based on C, so that makes them very similar. But C++ needs you to do a lot of stuff that C# doesn't. That also allows you to do stuff that C# does not, but you definitely need to be more careful with doing stuff like memory management. That's something that C# does on its own on the garbage collector. You have to be careful with that stuff on C++, or you get a memory leak. By no means means a C++ expert, but in average, you have to write more code to get the same features working. Do I know any Swedish? No, I do definitely not know any Swedish. I suck at Swedish. And it's funny because people always expect like Danes and Swedes to understand each other, but every time a Swede opens his mouth, like I go like, what? Can we do English or something?
I think you're the only Danish person who doesn't know Swedish.
Yeah. Sophia says I'm the only one who doesn't, but all right. Why would your colors of the lines be gray even though you've set the colors? So I'm just going to switch into Unity here. There are a few things that could allow that to happen. One thing is if you have set the gradient wrong here, make sure to delete both ends here so that you only have a single one, and make sure to set the color on that. Make sure to also have the opacity, the alpha here, set completely all the way up to 255. And finally, on your material here, the material you add up here, make sure that's only one, and that the shader on that material is set to Sprite's default with a tint of completely white. There you go. Those are all the things that I can kind of think of that could go wrong. What about German? I had a little bit of German in school, but I was embarrassingly bad, so I am not going to speak any more German. I'm sorry. I am Danish, yes. You're also Danish, but live in France. That's cool. I've never lived in France. I've been to France. That was fun. Where can I start learning to create 2D sprites, environments, players, NPCs? I'm really a noob when it comes to game design. All right, so if you want to do like 2D graphics, it's really, I know this is annoying to say, but 2D graphics is one of those things that are pretty easy to get the basics of. You don't need many tools to get started, but you need so much practice when it comes to like making things beautiful, because it's such an artistic platform, and it's frankly one with some very simple tools. I mean, it's just a pen. Instead of using a paper and pen and paper, you're just using your mouse. There's really not much of a barrier there between what you want to do and what comes on the screen. But I would definitely recommend just practicing a lot. I would recommend maybe if you're just starting out to do some pixel graphics. Pixel art can be a bit less frightening because you don't have to know as many techniques. You just have to kind of fill in the holes. I actually have a asset store package called UPA Toolkit where you can download that, and you can do pixel graphics inside of Unity. But you could also use some internet tool or Photoshop or GIMP. If you're just starting out, I like Photoshop a lot, but if that is kind of not within your price range, GIMP is just fine. I would recommend watching some basic tutorials and then just get going, try and create something and very quickly import it into your game and try and see if it works, because making something look good is not necessarily the same as making it look good once it's in the game. So that's kind of all I got. I'm by no means a great 2D artist. Awesome. So yeah, do pixel art if you're a beginner. I totally agree. That's a great place to start, but it really depends on what you want to do. I don't think there's like one thing to do. What was my first game and first language? Oh, that's a hard one to remember. I'll have a sip.
It was your game.
Yeah, I think so. So actually my entire I've been making games and doing stuff on the computer since I was little. So one of the very first things that I did, I believe that was in Visual Basic, and it was so old and so bad that I don't even want to talk about it. Then I began to use the Blender engine quite a bit once it was very young. And I used it to actually use the internal engine to do a very simple cube game where you would avoid some cubes and other cubes would fall onto you, and it was kind of fun, but sucked. And then I transitioned over to Unity because I wanted to do a game called Your Game, and the idea was it was going to be an iOS and iPad application. Or initially an iOS application because the iPad wasn't fully announced at the time. And what I wanted to do was just have the player be able to create small levels inside of the app and have them experience what it's like to be a developer, but like with a very small entry barrier and very small learning curve. And that's why I started to use Unity actually. And that's also why I started the Brackeys channel, is because I thought, well, I have no way as a totally young developer to get this out into the world and let people see what it's all about. So I started the tutorial channel kind of to get people to recognize the name of Brackeys and to pimp out the game. And then the game didn't turn out too well, and I thought that doing tutorials was really fun, and so I just transitioned over to doing that and exclusively that. But of course I've made games since, but that has always been my main focus since then, and that's, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. All right, so what software do I use? That's an extremely vague question. I use so much software. I use Unity. I use Visual Studio. I use Photoshop, Adobe Audition, Adobe Premiere. Okay, I'm gonna say what I actually use them for. Photoshop for 2D artwork, some vector graphics. Illustrator for only vector graphics. Adobe Audition for recording some sound, OBS for recording everything like now and for streaming and stuff like that. I use Premiere Pro for editing, After Effects for editing more advanced stuff if you want effects and stuff like that. And I can't remember all of the other ones. I use Source Tree for syncing stuff through GitHub and a variety of other programs. I'm really a software nerd. Right, so let me see here. Will you continue the survival game series? So the survival game series is currently in a kind of annoying state, and I will have a sip of the beer here. The survival game is currently in a kind of annoying state because I feel that I didn't finish it. I didn't round off the series properly. But I also got to a point where I didn't have too much fun making the videos because I wanted to start other projects, and people were really asking for a lot other stuff and not so much for more videos on the series. And so I stopped with the intention of returning to it for a while. And now it's just gotten to the point where those videos are so outdated, and so many of them are created at a time where I didn't have as much experience as I do now. And whenever you kind of evolve as a developer and as a video maker, you look back at old works and think, what was I doing? And I think that all the time when I look at that series. So it's kind of, when people ask me about it, I just do this. I just turn away. I didn't hear that. Don't tell anyone I said that. So yeah, but what I want to do is I definitely want to address it at some point. I would like to do that, but I don't think that I'm going to return and spit out more videos because they're just so old, and I would have to redo the entire series, I feel like, to make it something that I was really proud of. But if a ton of people request me to, of course I'm going to do that. So it's really on you guys to request it, but it's really not what I feel like people want to see right now. So it's all on you. So how to start in 3D design. All right, so 3D design is something that I'm really not good at, so I'll just put a disclaimer in there. I've used a bunch of different software whenever it comes to 3D because I'm so bad. I always thought, well, the software has got to be the problem, and it never was. I've used Cheetah 3D, I've used Blender, I've used Maya, 3ds Max, Mudbox, ZBrush. I even used, what was it called? Wings 3D. I knew a guy, or know a guy who's really fond of that software, even though it's kind of wonky. And I've never used SketchUp, but a lot of people really like that. So what I would recommend is just picking up some software. I have a video called What Modeling Software to Choose or something like that. It's on the channel. Just search for modeling software. Picking up one of those and just keep at it. I think becoming really good in one of those programs is one of the best things that you can do. So just pick one, stick to it, and again, practice a lot, find some basic tutorials on it, and just go from there. And as always, whenever you want to do 3D modeling and stuff like that, just as with the 2D, try and put it into a project. Try and integrate it into some kind of production pipeline, to use a fancy term, because if you're just creating the models for yourself, you're going to be disappointed when it doesn't work when you want to build a game. So just try and bring things into Unity and play around with them, and you're going to have a lot of fun. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? Please continue the survival game series. All right, I have noted your request. Why did you choose Unity and not Unreal Engine? Have you ever thought about switching to Unreal after it became free? I've never thought about like switching to Unreal. I mean, the thing about game engines is, and really any technology when it comes to powering your game or it comes to making good assets or whatever, it's all about choosing what you find suits your project. So what you want to use, what software you want to use is a question of what do you know and what are you able to learn and what suits your project. It should never be about what software is just superior to the other period. It should always be a matter of what do you want to achieve with your project, what are your requirements, how large is your team. So if I was in a team of maybe 5 to 10 people, more towards 10, I would definitely pick up Unreal and I would play around with it. Of course, it depends on what I wanted to make. If I wanted to make a 2D game, put it on mobile, I would not use Unreal. If I wanted to create the next Unreal tournament, I would probably use Unreal. So it really depends on what you're going to do with it. I think learning both is a great idea, and I might do some Unreal tutorials at some point. But I really think that my target is primarily newer developers and developers who aren't necessarily part of a larger team. And I think in general, that Unity is better suited for those kind of people. So that is why that I have such a love towards Unity and so many other smaller reasons as well. But really choose what you want to use and what suits your project. Wow, I'm rambling. More beer. You joined my team. Really appreciate it. I will get in touch if I decide to create one. What are the settings on the colliders? I'm just going to show you that really quickly. Let's jump in here. So here's the tail, and the settings are the same. Edge collider here, just a trigger. Nothing in here that's going to be set through the script. And the player here, or the snake, has a circle collider, also a trigger, and that has a rigid body of type kinematic. So those are the collider settings. The gorgeous demo Unity made was in the current Unity version. Yes, that is correct. And it was freaking awesome. I really liked that. I hosted it on my channel as well. So that was fun. They reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to show this? And I was like, show me the demo. And I just thought it was amazing. So of course I wanted to show it. Can we have a video on changing weapons and changing maps on your FPS series? Also the ability for people to add their own maps would be cool. Like make it moddable. Moddability is not on part of the scope of that tutorial, at least not yet. I think that's kind of without the reach of the tutorial, at least for now. But I think the other requests could be really fun. Whenever it comes to like adding the ability to create different maps, well, you have to make more maps. And frankly, I spent so long getting the arena to look just right and seeing how we could easily implement it in like an hour-long video and still have a really cool looking level. And the whole model was created by Samin Iben, awesome guy, you can check him out. And it took him so long. So I don't think necessarily that we're going to be creating a second map. But I might add some functionality for it, and I might do some weapon switching. I definitely want to have a look at some new exciting mechanic that we can add to the series, because I think the last one was bug fixing, and we've been so caught up in the whole login account data serialization system. We need some more exciting features on that, but I haven't totally planned out what yet. But you're very welcome to suggest stuff. This has become the game of spam your question until it's answered. I'm sorry about that. I'm doing my best here. How would you recommend? How would I recommend to learn code? Watch Brackeys tutorials. Decide to make a game and learn the code needed to do that, or look at everything in the code language and play around with each function individually. Definitely not the last one. I always think that the best way to learn anything is having an idea of what you want to do with it. Because I think it's so hard to learn anything out of context. And frankly, it's a problem with the way that a lot of stuff is taught. My main problem with going to school was that everything was taught in a way that it was so hard to understand the concepts, or at least many students felt that, because they were never really applied to something useful. I mean, some of the knowledge that you get in school is amazing. Some of the stuff that you learn is it's really, really great to know. But a lot of times, especially in mathematics, it never gets applied. I mean, I learned about vectors, I learned about different types of functions, and if I hadn't done game development on the side, I would have never understood that kind of stuff, because you have to show in context what it does and why it's useful. And that's why I think working in this project-oriented way that kind of allows you to have a look at where you are and where you want to go, and take a look at all the stuff that can get you there, and exploring, wow, that's super awesome, that's so great for my project. Jesus, vector graphics are awesome because they can do this and that and that. That is really, really useful for a lot of people. Of course, everyone learns differently, but at least from my experience, that is what gets or is the biggest motivator for keeping at it, because you can always have a look at what is the best way to learn something. But I think the best way to learn something is just not to give up and just to keep going at it, and therefore it is to do what you think is fun. So just find some project that you think this would be so cool, this is what the world needs. Even if it's in the next Call of Duty, just try it out and have fun with it. Of course, I tend to recommend that you stick with some smaller programs in the beginning, because it will make it easier on yourself to finish something and see the whole production process. But if the next Call of Duty is what you want to make, just get started. So, am I using a green screen or am I in a black hole? That is a very good question. Neither. This is not a green screen. This is in fact a black screen here. So you can see black fabric. I don't know if I can show you this. It's very black, and I compressed the colors a little bit to make it impossible to see all the wrinkles in the cloth and stuff like that. But I debated on using a green screen, but I think it looks not too good sometimes. So I really like this. And yeah, if you want to have a look around my apartment and see some of the gear that I'm using, because some people are asking about that, I just uploaded, like yesterday, a setup video showing all of that stuff. So you can check that out now on the channel. And this is another time to do a Patreon plug, so it's there. So if you want to support the channel and like this stuff and want to see more live streams and more videos, go to patreon.com/Brackeys. You can donate a monthly amount of your choosing and get some rewards in return. And it just helps out so much. And thank you so much to all of the people who are already donating. And look who's joining in again. Oh, say hi. This one's called Charlie. So Charlie, say hi to the stream. Isn't he cute? He's very tired. Look, I will put him down to rest. All right. I made a text-based Pokemon game in Java. That's awesome. That could be really fun. Make sure to share that on the forum or something. Would you do programming challenge type of videos? That could actually be really fun, but I'm also really afraid of the embarrassment. So I definitely want to do more game dev contests like Ludum Dare. Definitely want to participate in the next one of those. But with the programming challenge, maybe not. So we've been live for 1.5 hours. So I think it's pretty much time to close this soon. It's been so much fun. I'm gonna get some more beer before we stop and come with the last questions here. We'll go 5 or 10 more minutes. At what game development company would I like to work? Not really in any of them. I would like to keep doing this. I think this is so much fun, and if I were to do a game, I definitely wanted to do it independently with a team that I assemble, or some guys that I hang out with, and we could have fun doing it. I don't want to become part of any larger company. That's not really my thing. I like this. It gives a lot of creative freedom, and the interaction with you guys is amazing, so I think it's a lot of fun. Love my videos, thank you, that's very kind. Would I ever do a video about integrating iOS and Android specific features to a game? example, Google Play services, etc. There are official guidelines or guides out there, but you make it so much easier. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think integrating some mobile stuff could definitely be a lot of fun, but I haven't had too many requests, especially as of late. I think maybe the whole mobile app trend has worn out a little bit, but if enough people suggest it, I would definitely do that. Would I ever do a racing game? I actually really want to do a racing game. I don't know what it is. I had someone suggested in the comments here recently and read over it, and I was like, that could be so much fun. So I might do that in the future whenever I decide to create a new series, but we'll see. Again, it totally depends. I'm really pretty much willing to do anything. It didn't sound good. I'm not that cheap. I'm pretty much willing to do any kind of tutorial as long as enough people are suggesting it and it's what you really want to see. I definitely hope to do a poll for the next video that I decide to do to kind of let you guys or to kind of involve you guys in the process. So that's what I'll do here. So I brought up the chat on the other screen here, and that makes things a lot easier. What about RTS? RTS games are really fun, and they're super fun to program as well because there are just so many data structures and different elements to an RTS that people normally don't think about. Just something like selecting a bunch of units and moving them around and all of the AI involved in that is actually a lot of work. So I think it could be super fun to do, but it also might be too much to take on for a tutorial series, or at least it would have to be in the advanced category, and I haven't done too many of those. I mean, the multiplayer FPS is one, but I don't want to have multiple advanced video series going at once because that's just too much work for me, and will cut off some of the beginners to intermediate. So I might do that at some point, but it is a difficult one. So yeah, and that was an RTS. So they're really hard to do. Could I do a tutorial on a flight simulator? Like one already existing, or like creating one? I have a good friend of mine is totally into flight sims. I would have to ask him for advice. I don't think I know enough about airplanes, and frankly not even physics to do that, because Jesus, some of those are realistic, and you also want to load in huge maps and stuff like that. That would be really advanced. I don't think I will go into that, mostly because this is the first time I've ever heard anyone suggest it. So yeah. Awesome. Could I explain how to do a curved bullet trail? Please stop spamming that, by the way. Something as rail gun trail from Quake 3. Now I can't really remember what it is exactly you're referring to, but whenever you want to do like a curved trail, you can just have it rotate around some axis that you decide on, and that should curve the bullet. So I couldn't see that being too hard. I mean, you have just seen how to create lines in space, and you can also just use the trail renderer attached to some empty object and move that around. That would look just fine as well. So yeah. I could do a MOBA game series or MMORPG. Again, really difficult games to create, especially the MMO part that stands for massive multiplayer online game. You can even hear it in the sound of the title, right? So that is a really scary thing to create, and it's probably not something that I'm going to create. I could create an RPG. That's already a lot of data and a lot of code, but an MMORPG is just not possible for a single person. MOBA games are really fun, but also really content heavy. So yeah, these are really advanced topics. Can you tell me with which tutorial I should start if I want to learn programming? If you mean my tutorials, I have one called Make a Game. That is a Unity tutorial with some JavaScripting in Unity. JavaScript is fairly easy to pick up. You can check that out if you want to start making a game. If you're more specifically geared towards just programming and want to start with, say, C#, I have a video called How to Program in C# that goes from the very beginning of like explaining stuff like variables, how to write things in the console, onto functions, onto classes and data structures, onto list and arrays and stuff like that. And then more advanced topics. But that's what you could do. You could also pick up a book if you want to read about it. But really, there's so much out there. It really depends on what you want to do. Will I upload this stream to YouTube? Yes, I will. I will make sure to do that, hopefully tomorrow. And text-based adventure, that could be really exciting. I've actually wanted to do some text-based stuff for a while as well. So if enough people suggest that, I will get right on that. A football soccer game. I've never played too many of those, and it's always difficult playing or creating games that you haven't played. But I could, of course, pick one up and try it out. Play some FIFA. That's pretty much the only football game that I know. That shows how, and I don't even know how many versions there are of that game. It's probably like 12 or something. Totally keen for a text-based adventure. More text-based adventure. Yes, please. All right. So that's exciting. I think that could be really fun. Text-based RPG. Yeah, that could be really fun as well. I mean, text-based stuff is easy and also hard because you're limiting yourself so much, and some of the technology then becomes really easy to do. But I mean, creating an interesting game in text is really hard. So I would have to play a lot of those games to kind of be sharp on what to do and some of the tricks there. But that could be really fun. All right. So I'm moments away from rounding up the stream here. I've had so much fun, guys. This is really last questions right now, and we're going to stop the stream here because my voice is just getting absolutely slaughtered. I don't understand streamers who can just go 8 hours straight. That's so impressive. If you want to see programming live streams, you can go to Cool18 as well. He does some pretty crazy coding marathons sometimes. Is my financial situation difficult? I wouldn't say it's difficult. I'm definitely not panicking about it, but it's not like I'm making a lot of money off of YouTube. I mean, my primary reason for creating a Patreon is because it just helps me get over the edge on to being able to support myself and live a normal life while doing this. And it's so essential. I mean, without the Patreon, that would be really difficult. So I'm really, really thankful for that. And also Sophia has a job, of course, so she chips in. But no, I wouldn't call it difficult, but definitely not overwhelming. Maybe I wanna go into game development as well, and yeah, maybe you could talk about your experience. How did my financial situation look before, or my life look before YouTube? YouTube is awesome. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I think it's awesome that you guys are enjoying it as well. And being a game developer is a lot of fun. It's a really creative process. So if you enjoy that stuff, you're going to love it. But you definitely have to shoulder a lot of responsibility, especially if you're taking responsibility for a team. Then that's a lot of mouths to feed and expectations to meet. So be careful with not shouldering too much and having too great expectations, because there are a lot of game developers, and it can, of course, be very, very difficult to get your game out there. You have to build up several games. Most developers have to build up several games in order to be able to support themselves. Only rare occasions you can do that with only one game. I could have a competition where you could send in gun and map models and then just use them. That's definitely correct. I could do that. So far, I haven't really involved you in the artistic process of that series. That might be something that I want to do. But for now, I really have some other stuff in mind. But that is definitely an option. It could be a lot of fun. Why don't I stream on YouTube? That's a good question. I just really like Twitch. I think some of the stuff that Twitch offers is awesome. I might stream on YouTube in the future if that's something you would rather see, but definitely just really liking Twitch so far. Everything has worked so smoothly, and yeah, so press the subscribe or follow, or I don't even remember the one that isn't paid down below if you want to see more on Twitch. Let's see, will I ever make a shader tutorial? That's possible, but I think the requirement for shader programming went down a lot with the standard shader just because it's so good and it does so much. But definitely a lot of stuff still requires some shader programming, so that is something that I could do soon. But there are awesome shader programming tutorials out there. Just search for it on Google. Especially the text-based ones are really good. Do I ever enter 24-hour programming competitions? I did Ludum Dare. That's not 24, that's 48. And I also hosted one myself called 10-Hour Games. That's a while back now. If anyone in here participated, say that in the chat. It was just so much fun, but never exactly 24 hours. What do I think about Pokemon? Have I played it? I've played a lot of Pokemon games. Pokemon is awesome, a lot of fun. And the new one, the big Pokemon game, was also a lot of fun, but just such a mess code-wise. Like, it was so buggy, and yeah, there's so much stuff that they could have done to make that better. It's crazy. What's next for the FPS series? We just talked about that. Some new feature. Very loose answer. Since you like programming games, what other games do you play? I actually play a variety of games, but I don't have time to play that much. Actually, I think it's been like a month since I last picked up a game and just played. But I've played a lot of the big franchises. I was such a Call of Duty junkie when I was younger. I have like 600 hours in that game. I've played a lot of Counter-Strike. In general, multiplayer games is what I've dedicated most time to, because I really like gaming as a social experience. And I've also played a bunch of other games. Some of the single-player games that I've enjoyed are Half-Life and Portal, for example. Skyrim is awesome. And some older games, I really like Ratchet and Clank and stuff. So I've played a lot of different games. An amazing indie game that you could check out that I recently played is Thomas Was Alone. I was really late on playing that, but that's just an amazing experience, so you could check that out. Will I do a Draw My Life video? That would be so much fun. I think that trend is kind of over, but that would be so much fun to do. I will definitely do something more personal on the channel, so it's not just in these live streams. Maybe a full Q&A video could be fun, where I kind of pick out the best ones and answer them hopefully a bit better than I do here. Yeah. And I think that is all, guys. So I think we're going to stop it here. I hope that you enjoyed the stream as much as I did. I don't think that's possible. I had so much fun. You guys are awesome. Thanks for supporting and for being here. I just had so much fun doing it. And yeah, so if you want to see more, subscribe on YouTube. That's there, youtube.com/Brackeys. If you have any questions about today, go and post questions on the forum. If you want to see more of this stuff, go to the Patreon page where you can support. Again, that's patreon.com/Brackeys. It's optional to do, but it helps out so much. So thank you so much for all of the support. You guys are awesome. Do you want to say goodbye as well? Say goodbye to the stream here. And
I'm just gonna pop up. Bye, guys. It was so fun.
Yeah, bye everyone. So thank you so much. I'll see you. Bye. Thank you so much to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in August, and a special thanks to Aaron Meta, Robert Roche, James Calhoun, Vixian P, and Andrew K.